In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Humanity stands surrounded by enemies. Its empire is held together by faith, sacrifice, and the blood of countless souls. But before the Imperium became the decaying realm we know, there was Terra. And there was a war that changed everything. A war between brothers. A war between gods. A war that brought humanity to the edge of extinction. This is the siege of Terra. And the palace was already dead. Its defenders simply had not stopped fighting yet. Once, the Imperial Palace had stretched across a continent. Worlds had been stripped of stone so the Emperor could raise a monument to humanity's future. Now that monument was burning. The ultimate wall had fallen. Entire bastions had vanished beneath rubble. Surviving districts were infected by the warp. Demons walked through streets where officials had governed 1,000,000 worlds. The Loyalists had been driven toward the Sanctum Imperialis. Behind them stood the Eternity Gate. Beyond it waited the Emperor. There was nowhere else to retreat. The siege had entered its final hours. Horus gathered everything for one last attack. Traitor legions, titans, millions of mortal soldiers, and creatures never born in reality. They covered the wasteland from horizon to horizon. The warp pressed against Terra until the stars disappeared. Time slipped. Distances changed. Dead warriors walked among the living. The Emperor's psychic shield was failing. Every hour, more demons crossed into reality. Rogel Dorn had spent years turning Terra into humanity's greatest fortress. Now, almost all of it was gone. Reports arrived from positions that no longer existed. Officers demanded reinforcements he did not have. The Praetorian could only decide where the Imperium would bleed next. Yet one warrior still moved above the ruins like a promise. Sanguinius. The great angel had fought without rest. His body carried wounds that should have forced even a Primarch from battle. But wherever he appeared, soldiers remembered why they were alive. They saw white wings against a poisoned sky. They saw the Emperor's son standing between them and extinction. They saw hope. Sanguinius knew that hope was a lie. He had seen his own death. For years, visions had shown him the same ending. Horus, the vengeful spirit. A confrontation he could not survive. But he knew something else was coming first. Angron. The Red Angel had once been a Primarch, a gladiator, a slave who despised the Emperor for becoming his final master. That warrior was almost gone. The being stalking Terra was a demon prince of Khorne. Pain no longer weakened him. Destruction renewed him. Artillery could tear his body apart, but the warp rebuilt him. Titans could burn him to ash, and he would rise. The nails inside his skull had reduced thought to one command: kill Sanguinius. Horus wanted the angel dead before the Eternity Gate fell. Angron wanted to prove that the brightest of the Emperor's sons could bleed. Between the brothers waited the last loyalist army. Blood angels stood upon the Delphic battlement. Imperial fists guarded the approaches. Mechanic Amengens prepared their weapons. Exhausted soldiers checked rifles with shaking hands. Many had not slept in days. Some still wore civilian clothing beneath their armor. They knew they could not win. Still, they remained. Because behind them were the wounded, the refugees, the Golden Throne, and the Master of Mankind. The final battle would not be fought for territory. It would be fought for minutes, for every second they could steal from Horus, for every heartbeat they could give the Emperor. Across the wasteland, the traitor horde gathered beneath banners made from skin and bone. World Eaters screamed their father's name. Word-bearers raised their weapons in prayer. Then something appeared above the ruins. A burning star. It fell through the poisoned atmosphere. The traitors began to cheer. The defenders watched in silence. It struck with the force of a dying sun. Walls cracked. Armored vehicles overturned. Stone became liquid. At the center of the crater, something rose. Wings unfolded through the flames. Chains dragged across broken earth. And from a throat that had forgotten every word except one, Angron screamed the name of the brother he had come to kill. Sanguinius! The great angel heard it. He closed his eyes. The future had found him. Far above the battlefield, another warrior looked down upon what they had done. Lotara Sarin sat upon the command throne of the Conqueror. Once she had been among the finest naval officers in the Imperium, a fleet killer, a huntress among the stars, the mortal captain trusted by the World Eaters. Her uniform bore the bloody hand of the 12th Legion, the highest honor they could give a human. She commanded one of the most powerful warships ever built, and she had been proud of her ship, proud of the Legion that treated her as one of its own. Now she resembled a corpse. Her body was starved, her skin was raw and scaled. Dehydration had reduced her to a skeletal figure slumped upon the throne. Blood gathered in her eyes. She couldn't remember the last time she slept. Around her, the Conqueror was dying, or becoming something else. The ship had spent too long inside the warp. Its corridors no longer obeyed reality. Passageways changed when no one watched. Entire decks vanished and returned. Dead crew members whispered from darkened chambers. Metal walls groaned like living tissue. To open a Vox channel was to hear souls burning. The World Eaters still aboard were too insane to reach the surface. They hunted through the lower decks. They killed slaves. They killed officers. Sometimes they killed one another. Lotara had executed warriors she had served beside for years. They had questioned what loyalty to Horus had made of them. Still, she remained faithful. When the water reserves turned into blood, she remained faithful. When demons walked through bulkheads, she remained faithful. When the Conqueror slipped out of reality, she remained faithful. She had promised the World Eaters her loyalty until the end. Now the end had arrived, and it looked nothing like victory. Outside the bridge, the War Master's fleet hung above Terra. Warp mist surrounded the ships. Shapes larger than battleships formed within it. Eyes the size of moons opened and closed. Wings wide enough to eclipse the sun unfolded, rotted, then grew again. The vessels absorbed the mist. Their hulls twisted beneath its touch. Reality and the warp were locking together around Terra. The Eldari had seen this before. It was how their empire had died. It was how a god had been born from suffering. Lotara looked down upon humanity's birth world. She could see no oceans, no continents, only a gray sphere wrapped in violet madness. The palace had been pulverized until its dust covered the atmosphere. Bombardment had torn open the planet's crust. Lava poured from wounds in the earth. Ancient chemical stores ruptured. Invisible gases flooded the surviving bastions. Buried vaults from the Dark Age cracked open. Radiation escaped from substances humanity had forgotten. The war had not conquered Terra. It had poisoned it. Millions breathed dust made from the palace. Those without rebreathers suffocated. Even space marines were mutilated by the air. Lotara asked a dying mechanicum adept to study the reports. The priest had never left the Conqueror, yet the ship had ruined him. His augmetics were rusted. Blood poisoning spread beneath his skin. His mechanical voice had failed. The report described Terra's death in cold language, but one sentence remained in Lotara's mind. The poisons in the atmosphere were scattering the light of soul. To those on the surface, the sun had turned red. A red sun above a dead world. Except Lotara no longer felt victorious. They had come to take the throne world. Instead, they had wrapped it in a funeral shroud. A figure stood near her throne. Karn. His face was a ruin of scars and metal staples. For once, he carried no axe. Lotara called his name. He said nothing. Then pain folded her body. Lotara fell from the throne. Her stomach convulsed. She vomited across the deck. Thin bile, pieces of stomach lining, and 3 human fingers. For several seconds, she stared at them. Then she told herself it was not real. A hallucination born from the warp. That was all. Karn approached and knelt beside her. He did not help her rise. Blood ran from Lotara's eyes as she pulled herself into the throne. Captain and warrior looked at one another. 2 servants of a rebellion that had promised freedom. 2 survivors who could no longer recognize what they had become. Karn, Lotara whispered. What have we done? Across Terra, loyalist and traitor were asking the same question. Karn had no answer. Lotara had asked what they had done. Angron was the answer. Once he had been a man who hated slavery more than death. On Nuceria, he fought in the arenas with the butcher's nails driven into his skull. The machines punished every emotion except rage. Peace became pain. Thought became pain. Only violence offered relief. The Emperor took Angron from that world, but he never freed him. He gave the slave a legion and commanded him to conquer. Now the last fragments of that slave were disappearing. Pain could destroy a personality. It could become so great that nothing remained except the capacity to suffer. Angron had learned that fury could do the same. There was no longer enough of him left to think. No memory that could become reflection. No understanding of what he had become. Where a mind once existed, there was now a storm of broken synapses and cables. The brother who screamed loudest for freedom could no longer recognize his enslavement. Corn had made him immortal, but immortality was not freedom. Angron did not live as mortals lived. He manifested. The warp shaped itself into muscle, armor, claws, and wings. The abyss pulled at his being, threatening to drag him into the immaterium. Only bloodshed kept him anchored. So Angron killed. Every life he ended allowed him to remain on Terra longer. He flew ahead of the armies chanting his name. Mortals marched beside demons that had never possessed flesh. To them, Angron was a god, a red messiah descending upon humanity's final fortress. To Angron, they were only noise. The only image that survived inside his mind was a pair of wings, white feathers marked with blood, golden armor. Sanguinius. Horus had placed the vision inside Angron's thoughts like a hook. The angel was waiting somewhere ahead. His death would quiet the nails, or so the promise whispered. Beneath him stood Avalon Bastion. Angron sensed that Sanguinius should have been there, but the loyalists had withdrawn. The walls were empty. The guns were silent. There was no blood. The absence was agony. Lightning erupted around the implants in his skull. Again the image appeared. White wings, golden armor, hands tearing feathers from bone. Angron roared at the empty fortress. Sanguinius was not there. But something else was. A pulse of life hidden beneath layers of iron. The crippled warlord Titan Conclamatus had been left behind. Its crew had volunteered for a final stand. The engine could barely move. Its stabilizers were destroyed. Its locomotors had been ruined by months of war. So it knelt outside Avalon, one knee buried in ash. Not in worship, for balance. The Titan still possessed a bellicosa cannon powerful enough to erase a city block. A handful of shells remained. The crew had given most of their ammunition to the engines retreating toward the sanctum. What remained would be spent here. They would fire until their weapons emptied. Then they would die as servants of the Legio Ignatum. It might have been glorious. No one saw it happen. Angron fell from the sky before the Titan could begin. He struck between its shoulders. The impact shattered Conclamatus's spine. Pistons ruptured. Armor folded. The princeps looked upon the demon at point-blank range. His eyes burned away. His soul was torn from his body before his scream ended. Angron knew none of this. He sensed only the lives trapped within the machine, the blood hidden behind its armor. He tore open the Titan's body. His claws reached into its burning core. Conclamatus had been built to survive weapons that destroyed cities. Angron ripped out its reactor heart with his hands. Fusion fire consumed him. Flesh burned from his bones. His wings became ash. For an instant, he seemed to die within the light. Then the warp rebuilt him. Muscle returned, armor reformed, wings opened once more. Destruction had become nourishment. Immortality through annihilation. Angron lifted the burning reactor above his head. Then he hurled it at Avalon Bastion. The core struck the wall. A false sun ignited. Stone and metal vanished inside the explosion. Another fortress fell on a world of falling fortresses. Angron emerged from the fire. The armies below roared his name. He heard none of them. He looked toward the sanctum, toward the wings waiting beyond the dust. Then he screamed the only word that still carried meaning inside his ruined mind. Sanguinius. While Angron tore down fortresses, Nasser Amit walked alone through the ash. He was a blood angel, but there was little angelic about him. Amit had never pretended to be human. He was a weapon built from the human form, a killer wrapped in ceramite, and he felt no shame in admitting it. A demon crawled into reality before him. It had existed in the warp for ages, born from betrayal, plague, and the death of a forgotten queen. It entered Terra believing its existence had led to this moment. Amit killed it 4 seconds later. His chainsword opened its body. His knife tore the remains apart. The demon dissolved. Amit continued walking. Pythia Bastion had fallen behind him. He had been among its final defenders. Before abandoning the walls, he ordered the surviving blood angels and refugees south. If they could not reach Golgotha Bastion, they were to run for the sanctum. Amit did not know whether any survived. Direction had become unreliable. Compasses lied. Chronometers disagreed. 2 patrols could meet and believe they were living on different days. The warp had infected time itself. Amit called for reinforcements. Static answered. He requested orders. Static. He asked whether anyone remained alive. Nothing. For a moment, he wondered if he was the last living warrior on Terra. Perhaps this wasteland was what waited after life. Roads and plazas had been crushed into the same gray ruin. Marble sweated pus. Soil bled beneath his boots. Bodies sank into the ground. Others fused into masses of dead flesh. A garden was growing across Terra, and every fruit upon it was rotten. Amit found human soldiers beneath the dust. They died so easily. A bullet, a fragment of metal, one breath of poisoned air. To a space marine, a human body was fragile, but Amit respected them. Anyone still fighting possessed courage, skill, or impossible luck. Every rifle mattered. Every beating heart was another moment stolen from Horus. So Amit kept searching for another unit, another survivor, anyone who could stand at the final wall. Elsewhere, beneath Razavi Bastion, a blood angel opened his eyes. Zephon woke inside a tomb. His return to consciousness was slow, wrong. One heart beat normally, the other pulsed once every several seconds. When he tried to speak, someone else's last words emerged. "They have ranged the main line." He did not understand. He tried again. The same sentence returned. A voice crackled through the darkness. Arkan land. The techno-archaeologist had found Zephon inside an Astartes stasis pod. Servitors purged the poisons of suspended animation. Zephon opened his eyes. Metal above him had rotted like flesh. Veins pulsed inside the walls. Black fluid leaked from the ceiling. Hundreds of corpses lay across medical slabs. Dust covered them as though they had been dead for years. The chamber smelled of opened bodies. Zephon tried to rise. His artificial limbs answered smoothly. Both arms and one leg were masterpieces built by Arkan land. Once, Zephon's body had rejected every augmentation. He had believed himself condemned to life without battle. Land had given him the means to fight again. Around the slab stood Zephon's mortal attendants, Shafia, Aristes, and Shenkai. Once, Zephon regarded them as reminders of his failure. Now he saw their fear, their exhaustion, and the loyalty that kept them beside him. Land called them slaves. Zephon corrected him. They are not slaves. Terra had taught him to see the humans beneath the legions, not as tools, not as ammunition, as people. Zephon asked where the apothecaries were. Most were dead. He asked what happened to the bastion. It was still happening. Razavi had become a grave filled with infected metal and corpses. The enemy was approaching. Above them, the armies were retreating toward the Eternity Gate. Zephon forced himself upright. His memory returned. His name, his legion, his title. Zephon, Dominion of the Blood Angels, Exarch of the High Host, the Bringer of Sorrow. Arkan land mocked the title. Zephon ignored him. The war had reached the final wall. Amit walked through the ash to find survivors. Zephon had awakened inside a tomb to join them. Neither believed Terra could be saved. That was no longer the point. The point was to stand, to hold, to make the traitors pay for every life they tried to erase. And beyond the poisoned horizon, Angron was still coming. The last road to the sanctum was lit by dying fortresses. One by one, those lights were going out. Above the retreating armies walked the Titans, god machines built to conquer worlds. Now even they struggled to cross the palace graveyard. The warhound Hindara served the traitor Legio Ordax. Its crew spent days climbing the ruins of the ultimate wall. The breach was a mountain of broken rock. Every step threatened to send the Titan sliding backward. Hindara fell twice. The first time, its Moderati stopped the descent. The second fall should have killed them. The ground vanished beneath the machine. Its stabilizers screamed. Princeps Ulien Grun gave the only order that might save them. Fire the Ursus Claw. The harpoon struck a reaver climbing above them. Hindara used the larger engine as an anchor. Its fall stopped. The reavers did not. The claw had punched into its spine. When the machine began sliding into the abyss, Hindara severed its own weapon arm and let the reaver fall. Thousands were crushed beneath it. Other traitor titans cursed Hindara. Ulien felt no guilt. The War Master's army had lost any pretense of order. Every engine fought for itself. Hindara continued with one arm missing. Its cockpit glass was cracked. Its joints were failing. Ulien had followed Horus because he promised a better Imperium. Now she watched world eaters and demons march beside her and wondered what would remain to rule. But there was no road back, only another target. On the remaining walls, the defenders faced a different choice: stay or run. At Arjuna Bastion, a space wolf named Rykath stood among his dead brothers. His war name meant, "No foes remain." It was not a boast. It was an oath. He would fight until every enemy was dead, or until he was. The withdrawal order came. Rykath ignored it. Gunships lifted from the wall. The bastion was lost. Rykath knew remaining meant death, but he saw no meaning in dying somewhere else. He removed his helmet, crouched beside his fallen commander, then turned toward the World Eaters and Thousand Suns advancing through the ash. Rykath offered no speech. The enemy no longer cared about honor, so he met them with steel. He died among their bodies, grinning while their blades entered him. The warrior who killed him took his skull. No one remembered the oath carved into it. Arjuna's final gunship escaped moments later. Blind in the dust, it struck a walkway. The wreckage spiraled into a traitor regiment below. Less than an hour later, Arjuna Bastion fell. Another light went out. At the Principa Collegiate, only 2 defenders remained. Transacta-7. Y1 was a Skyterius of Mars. Her eyelids had been removed so she could never lose visual data by blinking. Her body existed for one purpose: obedience. The last order inside her mind repeated without end: defend Principa, defend Principa, defend Principa. No command had replaced it. No superior answered. Beside her was Sergeant Silas Envaric, a mortal soldier dying from radiation emitted by Transacta's weapon. His skin had blackened. He coughed blood into his mask. She warned him that remaining near her would kill him. He stayed. Transacta could not speak Gothic. Her throat produced machine code, so they communicated through signs stored on a data slug. Envaric called her T. He made jokes she rarely understood. When she told him they were alone, he smiled. You and me, T. We've got this. Then 7 Emperor's children appeared through the dust. Transacta and Envaric had surprise. They had nothing else. Before the attack, Envaric asked one question. Did she consider him a friend? Transacta entered an answer into the data slug. Affirmative. Then they opened fire. Their ambush became the final act in the defense of the Principa Collegiate. Transacta was struck down first. The traitors believed her dead. And Varric continued fighting. One mortal man against 7 space marines. He never had a chance. They impaled him on a banner pole. They burned his body. Then they ate his flesh. The Principa Collegiate fell. Another light went out. Across the palace, the story repeated. Fortresses died. Last stands vanished without witnesses. Names were lost beneath ash. But every life bought another second for the sanctum. The survivors continued toward the Eternity Gate. Behind them came the Titans. Ahead waited Sanguinius. And above the final wall, the red sun continued to rise. Among the traitor horde walked Cargos Bloodspitter, apothecary of the World Eaters, a warrior who once preserved life so his brothers could continue taking it. Now the butcher's nails had eaten holes through his memory. Names disappeared, faces became strangers. Only violence remained clear. But one name had not been erased. Nasser Amit. Long before the heresy, the World Eaters maintained gladiatorial pits aboard the Conqueror. Warriors fought to test skill, to settle grudges, to feel the brotherhood of the arena. Cargos was one of its finest fighters. Amit entered those pits whenever the Blood Angels fought beside the 12th Legion. They were different. Cargos laughed. Amit rarely smiled. Cargos fought with the nails burning inside his skull. Amit possessed a fury entirely his own. But in the arena, they understood one another. They fought chained wrist to wrist, sometimes as opponents, sometimes as partners. They learned every movement the other could make, every feint, every weakness. 100 times they were bound together. 100 times they walked away alive. They became chain brothers, not because their legions demanded it, because each trusted the other with his life. During one contest, Cargos defeated a blood angel named Naresh. The duel ended when Cargos smashed the warrior's face apart. Then Amit entered the pit. Naresh was dying. His gene seed had to be recovered. But the traditions of the 9th demanded more. Amit cut into the dead warrior and consumed part of his flesh. Through the homophagia, fragments of Naresh's memories would survive inside him. Cargos watched without disgust. The World Eaters had their rituals. The Blood Angels had theirs. When it was over, they clasped wrists. They embraced. Until next time, Amit said. Neither knew what the next time would become. Years later, they met on Terra. Cargos rode with the traitor horde toward the sanctum. The word-bearer Inzar walked beside him, preaching ascension. He told the World Eaters they could die as mortals or follow Angron into immortality. Cargos wanted to believe him. The nails made belief easier than memory. Ahead, a refugee convoy fled toward the final fortress. The World Eaters attacked. Then a warrior in red armor came through the dust. Cargos saw the name upon the shoulder plate. Amit. Everything slowed. The nails fell silent. For the first time in years, Cargos remembered. The conqueror's pits, the chains around their wrists, the brother beside him through 100 fights. Amit, Cargos said, my brother. Amit looked into the ruined face of the warrior he once trusted. Then he spat upon him. Eat shit, traitor. His blade crossed Cargos's throat. Blood erupted. The World Eater fell. But he did not die. The traitors recovered him. Their apothecaries rebuilt what Amit had destroyed. Metal replaced shattered tissue. A mechanical throat gave him a voice like a grinding saw. The wound became another scar. The humiliation became another reason to hate. Yet somewhere beneath the nails, Cargos remembered the embrace. That was the cruelty of the heresy. It took the people they loved, placed them on opposite sides, then demanded loyalty be proven through murder. Amit had not hesitated. To him, the man from the arena was already dead. Whatever remained inside Cargos had chosen Horus. That choice was enough. Cargos saw betrayal. Amit had broken the chain they forged before the galaxy divided. The Bloodspitter wanted another fight. Not an ambush in the dust, not one blade across the throat. A true contest. Weapon against weapon, rage against rage, brother against brother. By the time Cargos could stand, the Loyalists had reached the Delphic battlement. Amit waited there with the Blood Angels. The World Eaters gathered beyond the wall guns. Both armies prepared for the final assault. Cargos stood beside Inzar and stared toward the fortress. Hate burned in his eyes, but so did tears. The chaplain asked what he was watching. The enemy, Cargos answered. He could have spoken Amit's name, but the nails were biting again. Memory was dissolving. Soon nothing would remain except the need to kill. The next time they met, there would be no greeting, no embrace, no promise of another contest. Only the last fight of two brothers who had survived everything except the war that divided them. Long before Terra burned, Sanguinius walked alone across the deserts of Baal. No army followed him, no choir sang, no crowd gathered to witness history. The legends would later speak of golden light and kneeling tribes. The truth was quieter. Sanguinius had questions, and he feared the answers. He had never seen a spacecraft outside his visions. The vessel waiting on the desert floor was covered in gold, but there was nothing graceful about it. It was a machine of blunt power. Armored figures waited beneath its shadow. The Emperor's guardians. Sanguinius descended before them. He carried a sword, but left it sheathed. Then a voice touched his mind. My son. The words carried more than sound. My son. My weapon. My ninth general. My stolen creation. and beneath every meaning, one possibility. You may have been changed. The Emperor stepped forward. He appeared human, dark hair, dark skin, a heartbeat beneath golden armor. But Sanguinius saw countless souls reflected in his eyes. This was a man, and something beyond one. I am the Emperor, and I am your father. Father, creator, master. The meanings overlapped. The Emperor spoke Baal's language with Sanguinius's own accent. Perhaps he took meaning from the angel's mind and returned it as speech. He circled Sanguinius. His fingers touched the white feathers. The angel felt a father studying his child, and an inventor examining a weapon. The first question escaped him. What am I? You are my son. But the answer contained other meanings. A primarch, a component of the great work, a creation stolen by an enemy. Sanguinius heard everything except the answer he needed. The clans of pure blood had found him in the wasteland. They raised him, loved him, feared him, and followed him as he brought peace to their poisoned world. They believed he was a god. Sanguinius never claimed divinity, but he understood what their faith gave them: hope, unity, a reason to survive beneath a radioactive sun. The Emperor told him faith was a weapon humanity could not be trusted to wield. Sanguinius challenged him. He protected his people, offered mercy when they needed it, brought death to their enemies. The Emperor said that did not make him divine. That was never Sanguinius's point. He looked into the Emperor's eyes and sensed worlds celebrating liberation. He also sensed cities burning, cultures erased, religions destroyed. The Emperor spoke of unity. Behind the word came conquest. Sanguinius understood the danger. My people are to be left in peace. No imperial vessel would enter Baal's heavens without permission. No one would interfere with the pure blood. Their beliefs would not be purged. The Emperor said Sanguinius feared losing what he built, but the angel corrected him. He was speaking of love. Then he asked about his wings. Were they part of the design, or had something changed him? The Emperor called him exquisitely wrought. It was not an answer. Sanguinius asked again, What am I? This time, the Emperor came closer to the truth. You are a gamble against the death of hope. A final roll of the dice, a weapon created for the moment humanity faced extinction. The Emperor offered him a legion, the stars, a place in the Great Crusade. On Baal, Sanguinius had saved thousands. Beside the Emperor, he could save billions. Then Sanguinius asked what none of his brothers had voiced. What if I refuse? The Emperor said he would not, because Sanguinius could never abandon lives he had the power to save. The answer was manipulation. It was also true. But Sanguinius would not surrender without a price. He demanded an oath. The clans of pure blood would remain untouched, free to live as they chose, free to believe what they chose. The emperor hesitated. Sanguinius watched calculation move behind his father's eyes. Was he surprised by his son's love for mortals, or searching for a path around the demand? At last, the emperor gave his word. "You have my promise." Only then did Sanguinius close his wings. Only then did he accept the future among the stars. His loyalty did not begin with obedience. It began with a bargain. A son would fight for his father's imperium. A father would leave his son's people in peace. Years later, Sanguinius still fought for lives weaker than his own, because that was who he had always been. The reluctant god, the protector, the gamble against the death of hope. The legion waiting for Sanguinius was nothing like the blood angels remembered by history. They were the Revenant Legion, the eaters of the dead. Their armor was gray. Their weapons were stained. Other legions spoke of them with disgust. The ninth lived close to extinction. They received recruits no one else wanted. Mutants, prisoners, children from the poisoned ruins of old Earth. Nasser Amit had been one. He was found beneath Boeotia, surviving among charnel pits. Another legion would have executed him. The Revenants rebuilt him. Needles, saws, organs, blood from a Primarch they had never met. The process drove Amit mad, then sane, then mad again. He survived. The warrior who emerged became Nasser Amit, a weapon of the immortal ninth. The Revenants won through endurance. When ammunition failed, they used blades. When supplies ended, they ate the enemy. When that was not enough, they consumed their dead. They called it the charnel feast. Through the homophagia, flesh carried memory. A fallen warrior could live inside the brother who consumed him. Skills survived. Experiences survived. Sometimes identities survived. When a legion master died, another captain ate from his body and took his name. The face changed. The commander continued. That was why they called themselves immortal. Rogel Dorn once condemned their cannibalism. The Legion Master gave one answer. We won. The victory was erased from history. The Revenants were dismissed in disgrace, but they endured. They had been given only impossible wars, then condemned for surviving them. This was the legion Sanguinius came to meet. It was raining on Tigar Pentorus. The angel arrived with Luna wolves at his back. Among them were Ezekiel Abaddon and Tarek Torgadon. The Revenants waited in the storm. Thousands stood in scarred gray armor. Their faces resembled Sanguinius as broken mirrors carry the same reflection. And they were afraid of him. They expected judgment. Surely this glorious Primarch would see monsters. Surely he would order them to abandon everything they were, or destroy them when they failed. Sanguinius walked through their ranks. He saw the blood drinking, the cannibalism, the atrocities committed for survival and sometimes pleasure. But he also saw why. The Imperium had used them, denied them support, and recoiled from the results. They had been allowed to survive, never taught how to live. Sanguinius stopped before a warrior. "What is your name?" "Idamas." Then he asked the next. "Amit." Sanguinius continued. He listened to every name, committed each one to memory. These were not faceless weapons. They were his sons. When all had spoken, the legion waited. Sanguinius told them to swear no oath, offer no allegiance, because his blood ran in their veins. Then the Primarch drew his sword, planted it in the earth, spread his wings beneath the rain, and knelt before them. The revenants stared in disbelief. Sanguinius offered them his allegiance. He promised to stand beside them in glory, or die beside them in shame. He had not come to force his ways upon them. He had come to learn theirs. The legion belonged to all of them. He would command them, but he would also answer to them. Even the Luna wolves shifted uncomfortably. This was not how Primarchs claimed their legions. Sanguinius told the revenants they could refuse him, but if they let him fight beside them, they could discover what their legion might become. The Emperor wanted Tigar Pentorus conquered. Imperial commanders had requested the Luna wolves because they did not trust the Ninth. Sanguinius looked toward Abaddon and Torgadon, then back to his sons. He suggested they prove the Imperium wrong. Thousands roared their refusal of Luna wolf assistance. Their voices overwhelmed the storm. The 16th withdrew. Sanguinius turned toward the legion that had expected condemnation and found purpose instead. "My friends, my sons, let us make ready." They won their first war together. In the years that followed, gray armor became red. Crude rituals became solemn traditions. The Eaters of the Dead became the Blood Angels. Sanguinius taught them control was greater than surrender, that beauty could exist beside violence. He did not erase the revenants. He gave them a reason to become better. And on Terra, as their ancient hunger rose again, the Blood Angels would discover how much of the Revenant Legion still lived inside them. The night before the final assault, one command passed along the Delphic battlement. "Do not look up." It was impossible to obey. The sky above Terra had become a wound. Colors without names moved between the stars. Beyond the wall, Horus gathered an army large enough to bury mankind's final fortress. Titans waited on the horizon like malformed gods. Some were no longer entirely machines. They breathed. They watched. Inside the Delphic keep, the defenders prepared for death. Armorers welded shattered plate. Human soldiers whispered prayers where the Space Marines could not hear them. Zephon stood while 3 mortal servants fastened his armor around him: Shaphia, Aristes, and their son, Shenkai. They had served him for decades and knew every scar in his armor. Yet Zephon knew almost nothing about them. To him, they had been tools serving a greater weapon. But with death so close, he finally saw their age, their courage, their humanity. He offered to send them behind the Eternity Gate. It would not save them, but it might buy a few more hours. They refused. They would remain beside him. Zephon apologized for his indifference and thanked them for their loyalty. He promised to keep them alive as long as he could. Shenkai answered that they would do the same for him. A weapon had been reminded that it was also a man. Later, Zephon found Arcan Land alone upon the rampart. The techno-archaeologist stared at the army coming to kill them. For once, arrogance could not protect him. Land began to cry. He had discoveries still to make, secrets still to uncover. Now all would die with him beneath a poisoned sky. He admitted he was afraid. Zephon did not mock him. Space Marines felt fear too. They were not fearless. They simply refused to surrender. Tomorrow, Zephon said, he would be as mortal as everyone else. Land rejected that. Mortals had dreams beyond war, families, futures. When a human died, unwritten tomorrows vanished. But an Astartes was made only for battle. When one died, Land said, it was merely a sword breaking. The accusation struck deep because Zephon feared it might be true. Still, he made Land promise to protect Shafia, Aristes, and Shenkai. If Land abandoned them, Zephon swore he would kill him with the mechanical hands Land had created. Then dawn came. Sanguinius rose above the Delphic battlement. 100,000 defenders watched through smoke, static, and flickering hololiths. They expected promises of victory. Instead, the great angel gave them truth. The wall would fall. Most would be dead within days. Their bodies would remain unburied beneath Terra's corrupted sky. Then Sanguinius offered them the last thing the Imperium had not already taken: a choice. Anyone who wished to leave could go, return to their families, seek shelter inside the sanctum, take their chances in the wasteland. There would be no shame, only his gratitude. Sanguinius confessed that part of him wanted to fly away too. He knew his death was close. Not where, not when, only that it was coming. But if one choice remained, he would choose where to stand, with his back to the final gate, with a sword in his hand. Not because victory was possible, because resistance was right. Then he asked them one question: would they run? For a heartbeat, the wall was silent. Then someone answered, "No!" Another voice joined, then another. Conscripts, Scutari, criminals, clerks. Some stayed from duty, some from anger, some because they had run for 200 days and could run no further. Their reasons did not matter. Their answer became a single roar. No! Sanguinius reclaimed his sword and launched himself from the wall. A corrupted Reaver Titan waited beyond the battlement. The angel crossed the wasteland alone. One stroke severed the Titan's head. As the machine collapsed, Horus's horde advanced. Thousands of winged demons filled the sky. Sanguinius raced back as they pursued him, burning apart against the Emperor's fading psychic shield. He landed among his sons. The Blood Angels stepped forward. Beside them came Imperial fists and white scars. Tens of thousands of bolters rose as one. Mortal defenders waited behind them with rifles, blades, and whatever weapons remained. The final assault gathered speed. Sanguinius raised his sword. Let the enemy break upon the legions first. The blade fell, and 1,000,000 guns began to sing. The first shots did not sound like weapons. They sounded like the end of the world. The Delphid battlement unleashed everything it had. Thousands of missiles crossed the wasteland. Artillery turned earth into fire. The warlord Titan's serenity of retribution marched at the head of the traitor advance, ancient and almost alive. Its crew had been dead for weeks. Their bodies rolled across the command deck while the machine fought from memory and hatred. Then the barrage struck. Its shields vanished, its armor came apart. The god machine died before it fell. Horus's army continued forward. Soldiers burned inside transports. Gunships spiraled from the sky. Every meter was purchased with bodies, and the War Master had more bodies than Terra had ammunition. The survivors reached the wall. World Eaters climbed with axes and grapnels. Gunships crashed onto the ramparts, spilling warriors from burning hulls. Titans advanced through the storm. Then something that had once been a warlord reached the battlement. Now it was iron wrapped in muscle. Veins pulsed across its armor. Hands of bone and metal gripped the wall. Its jaw opened. A ramp extended from its mouth like a tongue. Laughing through every speaker, the dying Titan vomited World Eaters onto the defenders. Zephan met the first with his blade. From that moment, battle lost all shape. No formations, no strategy, only pressure, noise, heat, blood. Zephan killed one World Eater and another replaced him. He broke a faceplate with his sword's pommel, drove the blade through the warrior's chest, then tore it free before the corpse pulled him down. The last warriors of the High Host fought beside him. They had once descended from heaven on wings of fire. Now they could barely move. The crush was too dense to swing properly. Space Marines strangled one another. They stabbed through armor joints. They killed with broken blades, fists, and teeth. Behind them, human defenders fired over their shoulders. Whenever the line broke, custodians led reserves into the breach. And somewhere above them, Sanguinius fought. Reports placed him everywhere, destroying siege crews, boarding a Titan, rallying shattered defenders, hunting traitor commanders. Zephan saw him only once, a flash of gold above the slaughter. Traitors pursued him on jump packs. Sanguinius turned and killed 3 before the others could react. Then he was gone, already becoming a legend while the battle still raged. Hours passed, or perhaps days. Time lost meaning. Zephin's chronometer jumped forward, then backward. His muscles threatened to seize. His senses drowned beneath weapons fire and the stink of burning flesh. Even an Astarte's body had limits. The attackers knew it. The human soldiers in Horus's army were not expected to conquer the wall. They were expected to die against it. Hundreds rushed each blood angel. Bayonets scraped across ceramite. Hands pulled at arms and weapons. The defenders killed them by the score. But every kill demanded movement. Every body clogged a chainsword. Every corpse made the ground harder to cross. The dead became a carpet, then a mound, then a red landscape beneath the warriors' boots. Blood carried spent shell casings across the stone. One human could not kill a space marine, but 10 could slow him. 20 could drag him down. Then a world eater could finish the work. The loyalist line broke. Reserves restored it. It broke again. Each time, fewer defenders remained. Archenland fought beside Zephin's servants, firing into the enemy and dragging bodies from the front. Some were still alive. Some begged for mercy when they saw the incineration teams. There was no mercy left. When land collapsed, fresh troops charged over him. He was carried to the rear. Within an hour, he was sent back. Above the battlefield, Angron circled like a wounded god. Again and again he hurled himself toward the sanctum. Again and again the Emperor's psychic shield threw him back. Weaker demons were already finding cracks. They moved closer with every hour. But Angron was too powerful. The shield still rejected him. His rage shook the sky. Blood for the blood god! Skulls for the skull throne! Every world eater repeated the cry. Angron strained against the invisible barrier. He felt it weakening. He wondered if his father's strength would finally fail. Then Horus spoke inside his mind. Not if, when. The Emperor's shield was failing for one reason. Magnus the Red was tearing it apart from within the webway. Far beneath the palace, in the impossible ruins between worlds, Vulcan hunted the thing his brother had become. Magnus refused to face him directly. He appeared as illusions, statues, smoke. Every strike of Vulcan's hammer found empty air or shattered wraithbone. But beneath the arrogance, Vulcan sensed effort. Magnus was stalling. Threads of psychic power stretched from his claws toward the golden throne. While they spoke, Magnus continued grinding against their father's will. Vulcan called him an imitation. The true Magnus had been proud, vain, certain he understood more than anyone alive. But he had not been this cruel. The demon wore his brother's face while displaying only his worst qualities. Magnus declared himself immortal, a master of forces Vulcan could never comprehend. Vulcan had not come to understand him. He had come to kill him. Magnus hurled him through illusions of Nocturne, Istvan, the Nightfall where Conrad Kurz had tortured him. Each false world was built from Vulcan's memories, but the webway responded to purpose, and Vulcan's purpose was absolute. He broke through every illusion. At last, he found Magnus kneeling on a lonely bridge, exhausted and bleeding as he attacked the Emperor. The webway had been created to resist the powers Magnus now served. It left him lost. Then the real battle began. Magnus killed Vulcan. He broke his spine, severed his hand, crushed his skull, burned him alive from within his cells. He suffocated him, decapitated him, electrocuted him, dissolved him, turned his body against itself until cancers consumed him in seconds. Each death brought pain, then darkness, then nothing. After the nothing came the bridge, a hammer, and Vulcan rising again. Magnus destroyed him over and over. Vulcan returned over and over. Each resurrection cost him something. Each death threatened his sanity. But Vulcan had been created to endure. Magnus had infinite power. Vulcan had infinite refusal. The Crimson King began to tire. His wings broke. His face collapsed beneath the hammer. The psychic threads attacking the Emperor grew thinner. Desperate, Magnus trapped them between heartbeats and showed Vulcan a vision of Prospero. He argued that the Imperium was a lie, a tyranny built through crusade and extermination. He claimed rebellion was necessary to sweep the board clean and begin again with the truth of chaos revealed. Vulcan did not deny the Imperium's crimes. He denied that Magnus's answer was freedom. Magnus had joined the brother who engineered Prospero's destruction. He blamed Russ, Horus, the Emperor for hiding the Webway project. Everyone except himself. He had been warned to leave the warp alone. He had disobeyed. He had sacrificed human lives to power his warning. He had shattered the Emperor's dream because he believed only he could save it. Even now, Magnus saw himself as the most important piece on the board. Vulcan told him the truth. Chaos had poisoned his virtues. Knowledge became obsession. Confidence became vanity. Hope became certainty that only Magnus could be right. The other traitor Primarchs could feel the bars of their cages. Magnus alone believed he had no chains. The vision collapsed. Vulcan struck. The first blow smashed Magnus to the bridge. The second destroyed a wing. The third erased his hand. For one instant, Magnus seemed to understand. He looked beyond Vulcan and begged their father to wait. Mercy entered Vulcan's heart. Then the Emperor spoke inside his mind. Magnus was lying, even to himself. Vulcan raised the hammer. Magnus made one final attempt to unmake him. He reached into Vulcan's genetic code and pulled it apart. Skin ignited, bones separated, organs dissolved. Vulcan became a burning skeleton, erased molecule by molecule. But he remained standing, and he swung. The hammer fell. Magnus the Red died upon the bridge. Beside him, Vulcan's ruined body collapsed into darkness. The attack on the Emperor ended. The shield would not recover. Too much damage had been done. But Magnus could weaken it no further. Later, something rose in the silence. A blackened skeleton, dead yet living. It took hold of the hammer and began the journey home. Ahead waited the demons of the webway. Vulcan walked toward them alone. The Emperor's shield did not collapse all at once. It opened in wounds. Inside the sanctum, exhausted refugees began to change. Daemons hollowed them out, wore their skin, used their hands to murder the families beside them. A custodian discovered a chamber filled with butchered bodies. Then the people behind him shed their human shapes. His warning crossed every loyalist channel. They are inside. The final fortress was no refuge. Malthador ordered the custodians and Sisters of Silence to purge the sanctum. Survivors from the wall would enter through the Eternity Gate. When hope was gone, the gate would close. Anyone outside would be abandoned. On the battlement, daemons appeared among the defenders. Retreat became a flood. Arkan land ran with Transacta 7Y1, Shenkai, and Sapien. He had promised Zephon to protect 3 servants. 2 were already dead. Aristes had fallen during an earlier breakthrough. Land found him while dragging bodies from the line. He stared at the corpse and insisted he had been helping him, as though effort could reverse death. Shafia died hours later. World Eaters landed behind the defenders and sprayed the reserves with alchemical fire. The flames moved like living things. Water fed them. Shafia burned into a statue of ash while her son screamed. Land saved Shenkai beneath an ancient force field. When the battlefield shook, thousands of ash statues collapsed together. The survivors breathed the dead. Now only Shenkai remained. At the barricades before the gate, Cargos finally reached Ammit. The Chain Brothers faced each other as their legions died around them. Cargos attacked with rage. Ammit fought with memory. The butcher's nails gave Cargos strength, but stole everything he learned. Every duel became his first. Ammit remembered them all. Every angle, every weakness. He blocked, evaded, waited. The nails punished Cargos for every missed strike. His technique collapsed. Then Ammit moved. He caught the chain binding Gorechild to Cargos's wrist and wrapped it around the World Eater's throat. Cargos was stronger, but Ammit knew what lived beneath the Blood Angel's perfection. A predator. He bit into Cargos's face, tore away flesh, bit again. This time he swallowed. Then Ammit broke his brother's spine and drove a sword into his stomach. Twice. Cargos fell. He had imagined a final moment of recognition, perhaps forgiveness. Ammit gave him nothing. He turned away and continued fighting. Cargos called for help. The word-bearer Inzar looked down, called him weak, and walked away. The blood-spitter was left beneath the boots of both armies. His last request was not for glory. It was for an apothecary. Cargos's charge had devastated Land's group. Shenkai had lost an arm. Transacta 7Y1 had been opened across the abdomen. Sapien's skull had been crushed in Inzar's hand. Land cauterized Shenkai's wound with his pistol. Then he turned to T. Her mechanical organs were slipping from her body. She told him to leave. He refused. Once she had saved his life. Now he would not abandon her because survival was logical. Land begged nearby soldiers to carry his friends. They lifted Shenkai, but T no longer answered. Arkan Land, who mocked sentiment, held her head and kissed her metal forehead. Then a shadow fell across him. Zephon had returned. His armor was broken. Zephon ordered Land to run. The gate was open, but not for long. Land looked at the warrior he had rebuilt, the weapon he had watched become a man, and began to cry. "They killed my friend," he told him, "and my monkey." There was no time for comfort. Half the surviving Blood Angels were ordered to retreat. The others would remain on the wall. Their purpose was simple: stand, die, by seconds. Not one unit refused. Thousands acknowledged the command and turned to face the horde. Amit rallied the defenders along the royal ascension. Zephon stood beside him. Behind them waited the gate. Ahead came world eaters, sons of Horus and daemons without number. Then reality shook. From the bodies of dead Blood Angels, flesh and armor pulled together. Meat fused with ceramite. Wings unfolded. A whip and axe formed from the warp. The creature had been defeated once before, humiliated before the sons of Sanguinius. Now it had returned to redeem itself in their blood. Kabanda opened its eyes and began walking toward the Eternity Gate. Kabanda had returned through the bodies of the Blood Angels. Their flesh became its flesh. Their armor became its armor. Only the whip and axe came from the warp. The demon had faced Sanguinius on Cygnus Prime. It had been defeated, humiliated, cast back into hell before the legion it swore to corrupt. Now Khorne offered redemption. The price was the blood of the 9th Legion. Kabanda forced its way through the Delphic archway. Heavy bolters and volkite cannons fired from above. The demon burned. It did not slow. Its axe did not cut metal. It wounded reality. One portcullis fell, then another, then the last. Kabanda entered the royal ascension. Blood Angels turned from the retreat and charged. The demon continued. Every Blood Angel it killed made it stronger. Their souls became fuel. Their memories entered it. Wars it had never fought. Victories it had never earned. Names and faces dissolved inside its hunger. Its wings thickened, its claws hardened. The shame of Cygnus faded beneath the slaughter. Then Sanguinius landed before it. The angel was exhausted. His armor was broken. Blood and grime covered the perfection Kabanda remembered. The demon mocked him. Sanguinius reminded it that he had killed it before. Kabanda answered by vomiting the blood of his sons into his face. Then they collided, sword against axe. Sanguinius fought with speed. Kabanda fought with strength. But the demon did not want the duel. It wanted blood angels. Every time Sanguinius wounded it, Kabanda broke away and attacked his sons. It crushed warriors in its fists, ground the wounded beneath its hooves, pulled victims back with its whip. Each soul restored more of its power. Kabanda revealed the purpose of its return. The great angel was temporary, a beautiful flicker in history, but his bloodline would endure. Kabanda promised to hunt his sons across the ages. Long after Sanguinius was gone, the demon would still be waiting. Every descendant carrying the angel's blood would inherit this war. Sanguinius swore he would destroy it whenever it escaped the warp. The demon smiled. Sanguinius would not always be there to protect his children. The words struck deeper than its axe. Kabanda wrapped its whip around one of Sanguinius's wings and dragged him down. The angel cut himself free. The duel became a brawl. No grace, no ceremony. They clawed at each other's eyes, choked one another, smashed each other against the marble. Sanguinius tore out one of the demon's eyes. Kabanda caught his leg and hurled him through a statue. Then it charged toward the Eternity Gate. Zephon and his brothers met it. Their swords broke against its skin. Their bolters tore away flesh that regenerated before their eyes. Zephon drove his blade into the demon's leg. The weapon failed. One sweep of its wing threw him across the ascension. Kabanda was almost at the gate. Then Sanguinius struck from above. The demon dragged him down. They rolled across the marble, choking and tearing. Sanguinius broke free and rose into the air. Kabanda followed. That was its final mistake. The angel hurled his spear. It pierced the demon's chest. Kabanda climbed after him, wounded and furious. Sanguinius folded his wings and dived. His sword entered between the demon's wings. It shattered the spine and burst from the chest. Kabanda fell. Sanguinius followed as they descended. He could have released it. Instead, the angel screamed and hurled it across the royal ascension. Kabanda struck the advancing horde. Lesser demons descended upon its broken body like carrion beasts. The bane of the ninth bloodline had failed again. But victory gave Sanguinius no strength. He landed before the Eternity Gate and fell to one knee. His sons formed a wall around him. Behind them, the gate began to close. Tens of thousands of loyalists remained outside. Sanguinius rose and fought backward into its shadow. Then the warhounds of Legio Audax fired their Ursus claws. 5 harpoons struck the gate. 5 chains pulled tight. The colossal doors slowed, then stopped. Sanguinius looked toward the sky. Something was falling through the blood-red clouds. A burning star with wings. It screamed his name in the voice of a brother. Angron had finally crossed the Emperor's shield. Angron fell from the sky like a burning meteor. Sanguinius rose to meet him. They collided above the Eternity Gate. Blade struck blade with a sound like thunder. Angron attacked with impossible strength. Sanguinius became a moving shadow. Every time the black blade fell, the angel was gone. Twisting, diving, climbing beyond reach. The butcher's nails punished Angron for every failure. Inside his mind, Horus commanded him to kill. The War Master was not ordering his brother. He was begging. Angron hated the weakness in his voice. Sanguinius cut across the demon's face. Flesh opened to the skull. The damage regenerated instantly. Angron caught Sanguinius and dragged him from the sky. The angel escaped. They returned to the air. Angron was stronger, but Sanguinius had been born to fly. The demon was a gargoyle chasing a hawk. They tore through gunfire and burning wreckage. Then Sanguinius vanished into the smoke of a dying titan. Angron followed his soul's light. The angel turned. His spear shattered Angron's teeth, severed his tongue, and punched through his skull. The demon fell into the royal ascension. Before he reached the ground, his body was rebuilding. Angron tore the spear free and hurled it back. Sanguinius caught it, turned with its momentum, and threw it back. The spear struck Angron like a falling star and pinned him down. But even that could not end him. Angron pulled himself free. His wounds closed, slower now, but they closed. He could not catch Sanguinius in the air, so he attacked the blood angels below. If the angel would not come to him, Angron would slaughter his sons. Sanguinius returned immediately. The brothers met on the ground. Their swords moved too quickly for mortal eyes. The impacts became a single metallic note above the battlefield. But only one brother was immortal. Sanguinius was exhausted from months of war, from holding the gate, from fighting Kabanda. Every movement made him slower. Angron drove him backward. Then Sanguinius saw an opening. He thrust his sword into the demon's body. It was a trap. Angron accepted the blade to get close. One claw closed around Sanguinius's throat. The black blade entered the angel's stomach. It had consumed more than 1,000,000 souls. Now it tasted Sanguinius. Angron pushed deeper. Blood ran from his brother's mouth. The demon drew him close and mocked the dying angel. Sanguinius reached weakly toward Angron's throat. Then his hands closed around the cables of the butcher's nails. Horus screamed inside Angron's mind. "Release him!" Too late. Sanguinius had made the same sacrifice. He had accepted Angron's blade to get close. His fingers locked around the technological dreadlocks buried through Angron's skull and spine. Then he pulled. For the first time since becoming a demon, Angron felt true pain. He clawed at Sanguinius, tore armor from his body, ripped feathers from his wings. The angel made no sound. He only pulled harder. They rose into the air together. Angron twisted and thrashed. Sanguinius held on. The nails were not attached to Angron's brain. They had replaced parts of it. Every cable was woven through his mind and anchored into his nervous system. Removing them meant removing Angron himself. Fire opened through cracks in the demon's skull. Corn laughed beyond the veil. The blood god cared only that blood flowed. Even his champion's death was worthy. Angron remembered his name, remembered mortal, remembered fear. Then the Lord of the Red Sands did something he had never done in either life. He begged. No. Only Sanguinius heard him. The angel's eyes held no mercy. He gave one final pull. Angron's skull exploded. Brain matter, fire, and the butcher's nails tore free together. The demon's claws opened. His wings stopped. Sanguinius released the corpse. Angron struck the royal ascension hard enough to shake the gate. For one moment, both armies were silent. Then the blood angels roared. The world eaters screamed. The psychic death of their father destroyed what remained of their reason. They forgot the gate, forgot victory, forgot the war. They turned on blood angels, death guard, word bearers, each other. Kill, maim, burn. Above them, Sanguinius hovered in the rising sun. In one hand he held his sword, in the other, the bloody crown of Angron. The butcher's nails still sparked between his fingers. Angron was dead, but the Eternity Gate remained trapped. 5 Ursus claws held the colossal doors open. 5 chains stretched from the gate to the warhounds of Legio Audax. Beyond them, the War Master's horde was still advancing. Sanguinius descended through the fire. His armor was broken gold. His wings were scorched and torn. The black blade had left corruption spreading through his blood. Every breath became harder. Still, the defenders called for him. Seal the gate. Sanguinius looked across the royal ascension. Thousands of blood angels were still fighting toward him. Imperial soldiers, Titan crews, civilians. People who had stood because he asked them to stand. Now he had to turn his back on them. But first, the chains. Sanguinius rose on ruined wings. One stroke cut the first. 2 blows severed the second. Then the third, the fourth, the fifth. The warhounds pulled backward, but the angel's sword broke Audax's iron. Freed from their grip, the Eternity Gate moved again. The last loyalists close enough to reach it ran. Some almost made it. Some stopped. They turned and fired into the enemy, buying one final second for those behind them. Sanguinius landed between the closing doors. For a moment, he looked toward the sons who would die without him. He wanted to return, to fight beside them until nothing remained. But the Emperor still needed him, and fate waited beyond the gate. Zephon and Ammit reached the sanctum. Others did not. The angel crushed the butcher's nails beneath his boot. Then he stepped inside. The Eternity Gate closed. Its impact silenced the battle for one impossible heartbeat. The past remained outside. Inside waited destiny. The siege was not over. The sanctum was infested with demons. The Emperor remained trapped upon the golden throne. Horus still waited aboard the vengeful spirit. But the War Master's greatest assault had failed. Magnus was broken. Angron was banished. The World Eaters had turned upon their allies, and the traitor fleet received fire from a direction it believed conquered. Lionsgate Spaceport had returned to Loyalist control. Shibin Khan opened its surface-to-orbit batteries. Traitor vessels burned. Others climbed away from Terra. Only the vengeful spirit remained. Horus lowered its shields completely. Not damaged, not failing. Lowered. An invitation. A final challenge to the Emperor. On the Conqueror, Lotara Sarin watched the reports arrive. Then she saw something sitting upon her command throne. It wore her uniform. It had her face twisted into something predatory. It was fused into the ship. The woman walking the bridge was only a memory created by the Conqueror. The real Lotara had surrendered body, mind, and soul to the vessel. The ghost was the fragment that had wanted to escape, the last part still capable of doubt. As it faded, another signal reached the traitor fleet. It came from beyond the solar system, a message intended for Sanguinius. The traitors intercepted it. They blocked it from reaching Terra. Robute Guilliman was only days away. The entire strength of the Ultramarines was with him, and he was not alone. Lehman Russ and the Space Wolves were approaching. Lionel Johnson and the Dark Angels were coming. Together, they had enough power to cleanse the skies above Terra. Guilliman asked Sanguinius for one final thing. Hold just a little longer. Victory and vengeance were coming. The war would end when they reached Terra. But Sanguinius never heard those words. He stood behind the sealed eternity gate, wounded beyond measure, believing no rescue was coming. That was the final cruelty. Hope existed. It was close, and Horus made certain Terra could not hear it. The defenders had survived the impossible, but survival was no longer enough. The vengeful spirit waited above them with its shields lowered. The Emperor would soon leave the Golden Throne. Sanguinius would follow him. And the great angel already knew what waited at the end of that journey. His death. Not here, not at the gate, but aboard his brother's ship. The battle for the Eternity Gate was over. The final battle for humanity was about to begin. If you enjoyed this journey through the last stand of Sanguinius and the Blood Angels, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because the siege of Terra is not finished, and the darkest moment of the Horus heresy is still ahead.